You've been told that connections are everything. That power is built by shaking hands, smiling wide, and weaving yourself into the web of others. But Machiavelli would laugh at that weakness, because every connection is a chain, and every alliance a hidden leash. Today, we will expose why isolation, not networking, is the faster, cleaner road to power. In the silent corridors of power, the loudest voice is rarely the most feared. It's the one that speaks least, observes most, and moves alone. The masses build networks to feel secure. The powerful isolate themselves to remain untouchable. Machiavelli understood that dependence breeds vulnerability. That when your strength comes from others, they own fragments of your fate. Isolation is not loneliness. It is the art of becoming self-contained, of removing every hand that dares to steer your will. Tonight, we descend into the darker geometry of human ambition, where solitude becomes a weapon and detachment becomes a crown. You believe alliances make you stronger. You've been taught that unity creates safety, that friendship multiplies opportunity, that no man is an island. But what if that belief is the softest form of submission? Dependence is not a weakness you can see. It's a quiet infection. It begins with small favors, small loyalties, small promises. And before you realize it, your power no longer belongs to you. Every alliance is a transaction, and every transaction writes a contract on your freedom. You owe, you compromise, you hesitate. And in the space where hesitation grows, your authority begins to decay. History is filled with men who thought alliances would shield them. And instead, they became prisoners of the very hands they trusted. Consider Cesare Borgia, a man of immense brilliance and brutality. His rise was fast, his grasp on Italy nearly absolute, until his power relied on the Pope, his father. And when that father died, his empire crumbled like sand through open fingers. The alliance that raised him was the same one that destroyed him. Dependence is a parasite disguised as partnership. It feeds on your ambition and whispers in your ear, you cannot do this alone. And so you bend a little each day. You make concessions. You share credit. You let others hold your secrets, your plans, your access. Until one morning, you wake up and realize your independence has been pawned in exchange for approval. Do you see it now? Every time you seek validation, you chain yourself to someone's opinion. Every time you ask permission, you confirm their authority. And every time you rely on another to open a door, you prove that you never learned to build your own. The dependency trap is psychological before it becomes political. It begins in the mind, in the need to feel supported, understood, liked. That craving is the soft underbelly of human ambition, because those who need to be liked will always be ruled by those who do not. Observe how the manipulator works. He gives first to bind you. He listens, not out of care, but to measure your weaknesses. He offers help when you're uncertain, because dependency grows best in moments of doubt, and when you finally reach out, he tightens the string. In courts, in corporations, in social circles, it is the same game. He who depends obeys. He who gives dependence reigns. You may think alliances are insurance against failure. But tell me, when the storm arrives, will your allies bleed for you, or simply retreat to protect their own interests? Loyalty exists only while it profits both sides. Once your value fades, your allies will vanish faster than smoke in the wind. That is why true power does not come from the number of people who know your name, but from the number who cannot control it. To stand alone is to stand unwound. When you free yourself from dependency, your decisions sharpen. You no longer ask, what will they think? You ask, what will this achieve? You stop trading authenticity for approval and strategy for sentiment. That is when your moves become unpredictable. And unpredictability is the first step to dominance. But isolation doesn't mean total withdrawal. The wise ruler still forms alliances, temporary, tactical, disposable. He uses them as tools, not anchors. He enters them with clarity, not need. And when the alliance no longer serves his purpose, he leaves without guilt. This is the difference between manipulation and enslavement. The manipulator chooses when to connect. The enslaved connects because he fears disconnection. You might feel a quiet resistance to these words, because dependence feels safe. It feeds the illusion of belonging, of mutual care. But power does not dwell in comfort, it dwells in solitude, where clarity burns brightest. Ask yourself, who do you depend on today? Whose approval dictates your courage? Whose validation silences your instinct? Trace those threads, and you'll discover the hands that hold you. When you start cutting them, the world will call you cold. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you've become distant. Good. Let them. Because the moment you stop depending, you become untouchable. And those who once sought to control you will feel something new: fear. The fear of a mind they can no longer influence. The fear of a will that no longer needs their applause. That is the paradox of power. The more you stand alone, the more others are drawn to your orbit. They mistake your self-sufficiency for mystery. They mistake your distance for authority. And soon, the ones you detached from will kneel for your attention. So choose. Do you wish to be surrounded or sovereign? Because the path of dependency ends in servitude, but the path of isolation, that is where dominion begins. Power is not built in noise. It's built in distance. Those who stand too close to the crowd are never seen as higher than it. You've been told to stay connected, to be available, visible, approachable. But the one who is always seen soon becomes ordinary. And the ordinary are never feared, only forgotten. There is a reason kings sat above their courts, not among them. Elevation is not merely architectural, it's psychological. Distance creates hierarchy. Mystery fuels perception. And perception, not proximity, is the true foundation of authority. You cannot command respect if you make yourself accessible to everyone. Familiarity breeds comfort, and comfort dissolves awe. When people feel too close to you, they stop fearing your withdrawal. And when they no longer fear losing you, they stop valuing your presence. Look at the great rulers, generals, and thinkers of history. They did not scatter themselves across the crowd. They withdrew, deliberately. They made distance their armor. Take the example of Emperor Augustus. He ruled not with constant visibility, but with measured presence. He appeared rarely, and when he did, his presence was sacred, deliberate, unforgettable. He understood that power thrives not in abundance, but in scarcity. Even today, the same principle rules the modern world. The leader who floods his audience with endless words loses weight. The strategist who speaks only when it matters commands silence when he does. You see it in the subtle hierarchy of every human system. The more detached the figure, the more others orbit him. Ask yourself, how often do you make yourself too available? How much energy do you spend explaining yourself, pleasing others, proving your worth? Every time you do, you dilute your value. Every time you chase attention, you sell authority for applause. Strategic isolation isn't about physical distance. It's psychological distance. It's the discipline of holding yourself just far enough to remain unreadable. Because mystery is control. The less people know about your motives, the more they fear what you might do. Consider the modern manipulator. The one who controls without raising his voice. He's not loud. He's not eager. He moves rarely, but when he does, everything changes. People wait for his approval, his next word, his reaction. Why? Because he's mastered the art of withholding himself. It's not about arrogance. It's about leverage. When you appear sparingly, your appearance becomes currency. And only those who control their visibility can control their value. Psychologically, distance activates something primal: uncertainty. Humans crave predictability. They want to read, measure, and define you. When they can't, project their fears and desires onto you. They imagine power greater than you actually hold. And that illusion is your greatest weapon. Strategic isolation also protects you from contamination, the subtle erosion that happens when too many voices crowd your mind. Each conversation, each opinion, each piece of gossip. They pull at your direction, fragmenting your will. Before long, you're no longer steering your life, you're reacting to theirs. To think clearly, to rule yourself, you must first guard your solitude. But let's be honest, isolation terrifies most people. Because in silence, you hear your real thoughts. And your real thoughts are often uncomfortable. That's why the weak drown themselves in company. They need noise to hide their confusion. The strong, however, use isolation to sharpen their perception until it cuts through illusion like glass. The strategist understands this. Distance multiplies the weight of every gesture. A short message from the silent man means more than 1,000 words from the talkative one. A single glance from the aloof leader can command obedience where speeches fail. So when you pull away, when you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop showing up everywhere, something shifts. People begin to talk about you instead of to you. They fill in the silence with fascination, fear, and respect. That's how legends form, not through exposure, but through absence. Ask yourself, do you want to be understood or obeyed? The more they understand you, the less they respect you. The less they know, the more they imagine. And imagination, once awakened, builds your myth faster than effort ever could. Distance is not coldness, it's strategy. It's how you turn perception into a throne. It's how you rise without moving. But be careful, isolation without purpose becomes decay. Withdraw too far, and you lose influence. Withdraw strategically, and you rule from the shadows. The key is balance: be seen rarely, be felt always. Speak seldom, but make each word echo. Move less, but make each move irreversible. Power isn't loud, it's distant. And the further you rise above the noise, the more the world bends to your silence. Remember this, authority is never taken, it's projected. And projection demands distance. So stay still. Let them come closer. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them mistake your silence for depth, your absence for superiority. Because the moment they start guessing, you've already won. Power does not belong to the one who feels the most. It belongs to the one who controls what he feels. And when you were taught that empathy wins hearts, that vulnerability builds trust, that showing emotion makes you human. But in the arena of power, emotion is currency. And every display of it is a transaction you can't undo. The moment you show your feelings, you reveal your wiring. You tell the world what motivates you, what angers you, what breaks you. And in the wrong hands, that knowledge becomes a weapon sharper than any blade. Ask yourself, how many times have you lost control not because someone overpowered you, but because they provoked you? They didn't win through strength, they won through influence. And influence begins where your emotions end. Consider the masters of manipulation throughout history. The kings, spies, and schemers who ruled not by sword but by silence. They watched, listened, and waited. While others spoke in passion, they calculated in calm. Because to be unmoved is to be unreadable, and to be unreadable is to be untouchable. Julius Caesar once said he preferred to face 1,000 swords than one enemy who understood his heart. He knew that emotion is the crack in the armor of the mind. The point of entry for control. When you care too much, you lose objectivity. You begin to protect your feelings rather than your position. You react instead of ruling. Emotional detachment is not coldness. It is command. It's the ability to remain composed when others burn in chaos. To stand calm when the crowd screams for your reaction. Because the one who stays calm decides the pace of every conflict. Imagine a confrontation. Two people clash, one angry, one silent. The angry one reveals everything: his triggers, his insecurities, his breaking points. The silent one reveals nothing. He lets emotion devour his opponent from the inside. And when the fury settles, only one still stands. The one who never entered the storm. This is why the emotionally detached mind holds the throne in every interaction. Detachment is psychological dominance. It denies your opponent the satisfaction of control. It makes them chase your reactions, guess your motives, and exhaust themselves trying to reach your center. But let's go deeper. Why do people struggle to detach? Because emotion feeds identity. You want to feel significant, understood, seen. And so you overexpose your emotions, hoping for validation. Yet in doing so, you hand others the keys to manipulate you. The manipulator studies your reactions like a hunter studies movement in the dark. He praises you when he wants compliance. He withholds attention when he wants obedience. And you, unaware, move according to his rhythm, because you care too much. To care less is not to stop feeling. It's to stop needing. It's to reclaim your emotional autonomy, to decide when to care and why. It's selective empathy, deliberate coldness. It's using emotion as a weapon, not a weakness. The great leaders understood this well. They showed warmth when it gained loyalty, but never attachment. They comforted with one hand and commanded with the other. Even kindness in their hands was a form of control. Psychologically, detachment expands your vision. When emotion clouds the mind, perception narrows. You see only the pain or the pleasure of the moment. But when you detach, the fog clears. You begin to see the entire board, every player, every motive, every hidden trap. That is why the calm observer always wins, because emotion is noise and strategy requires silence. Look at your own life. How many decisions have you made from anger, fear, or love, only to regret them later? How often have you said, "I wasn't thinking clearly"? You were thinking, but with the wrong master. You were ruled by emotion when you should have been ruled by will. You cannot control others until you control yourself. And you cannot control yourself until you learn to master emotion without erasing it. The goal is not to become heartless. The goal is to have a heart no one can play. When you detach, people will call you cold. Let them. They confuse self-control with emptiness because they've never known true composure. Their emotions are their masters. Yours are your servants. The difference is everything. Soon, they will notice something unsettling about you. Your silence, your stillness, your refusal to react. They will test you, provoke you, try to draw emotion from you just to feel powerful again. Don't give it. Your calm is their chaos. And when they realize they can no longer shake you, you will have achieved the purest form of dominance. Because in the kingdom of noise, the one who does not flinch rules all who do. They call it networking. They say it's the secret to success. To know people, to connect, to collaborate. But what if this web you're weaving isn't a net for opportunity, but a net that traps you? In this age, connection has become the new obedience. You think you're building influence, but what you're really building is dependency. Digital chains disguised as relationships. You think your value grows with followers, contacts, and visibility. But the more eyes that see you, the more strings that bind you. Once, kings ruled through scarcity, their faces hidden, their presence rare. Now, people destroy their mystique willingly for reach. They exchange the power of mystery for the currency of likes. They have become performers in a theater of exposure, and every audience member is a potential judge, not an ally. You may think this is progress, you may call it community, but in truth, it's surveillance. Every post, every interaction, every moment of connection. Another window into your mind, your habits, your fears. You've handed the world your emotional map, and you call it branding. The illusion of the network is seductive because it flatters your ego. It whispers, you're part of something larger. But the powerful do not crave belonging. They crave control. And the more you connect, the more control you surrender. Think of history's great manipulators, the courtiers, the advisors, the spies. They understood one thing. Visibility kills leverage. The one who speaks too much is predictable. The one who reveals too often becomes known. And the known can be managed. Cardinal Richelieu built his empire not through friendship, but through information. He let others connect, gossip, and expose themselves, while he watched from the shadows. He didn't chase the network. He controlled it. And when the web tangled, it was always his enemies who were caught. The same principle rules today. The more connected you are, the more predictable you become. The algorithm learns your rhythm. Your peers learn your insecurities. Your competitors learn your habits. And slowly, the very visibility you craved becomes your vulnerability. You might believe connection equals influence. But influence built on exposure is temporary, because it depends on the attention of others. When they turn away, so does your strength. True power is silent influence, the kind that shapes decisions without being seen, the kind that commands from the background. Ask yourself, when was the last time you made a move that no one could trace? When was the last time you worked in silence, without announcing, without seeking approval? If the answer makes you uneasy, it's because you've been conditioned to equate presence with progress. But power moves in absence. The most dangerous men in history were rarely the ones speaking. They were the ones listening, recording, calculating, waiting for others to expose themselves through connection. There's a reason spiders sit still in their webs. They don't chase, they let others come closer. That's how power operates. Connection is only useful when you are the spider, not the fly. The modern obsession with networks is born from fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of missing out, fear of irrelevance. But the powerful do not chase relevance. They create it by withdrawal. By existing slightly out of reach, they make others seek them. That is how admiration becomes dependence. Psychologically, networks feed your dopamine but starve your dominance. They reward conformity, not clarity. They teach you to speak like others, think like others, and move in predictable loops. Until one day you wake up surrounded, connected to everyone, and owned by all. This is the new form of servitude, a mind enslaved not by a master, but by the constant need to be seen. You no longer act from vision, but from reaction. You no longer create from will, but from validation. Break this illusion, withdraw strategically. Let silence replace visibility. Let solitude cleanse the noise of constant attention. Because the fewer people who can reach you, the fewer who can use you. You must learn to appear connected, yet remain independent. To move in the network without being of it. To use visibility as bait, not as nourishment. Remember, every web looks beautiful until you're the one caught in it. Connection can open doors, yes, but it can also lock them from the inside. So, before you build another link, ask yourself, are you the spider or the prey? Because only one of them survives the silence that follows. Power begins not with control over others, but with control over perception. And perception begins in the mind that stands alone. The sovereign mind is not distracted, not diluted, not divided by the noise of the crowd. It exists above the fog, clear, ruthless, and precise. It sees patterns others miss, because it no longer hears the constant hum of opinions. You have been trained to believe that wisdom comes from collaboration, that truth is found through collective thought. But collective thought is rarely intelligent. It's emotional, contagious, and unstable. It drifts like a tide, and drowns those who do not anchor themselves in solitude. Look around. How many minds today are truly their own? Every idea you consume is wrapped in influence. Every belief you hold has fingerprints on it. You think you're thinking, but are you really? Or are you simply echoing what was placed there by repetition and reward? The sovereign mind withdraws to see clearly. It knows that to lead, you must first detach from the chorus, because clarity cannot exist where noise reigns. Consider Marcus Aurelius, a ruler surrounded by flattery, chaos, and war. He governed one of the largest empires in history, yet his greatest empire was internal. Each night he wrote in silence, purging himself of illusion. He ruled his own thoughts before ruling a nation. That is sovereignty. To be emperor first within, then without. Most people fear isolation because it exposes them to themselves, and few can face that confrontation. In solitude, your masks fall, your delusions surface. The noise you used to drown in disappears, and what's left is the truth. Unfiltered, unforgiving, uncomfortable. But that discomfort is transformation, because clarity always arrives through suffering, not through conversation. When you sit alone, stripped of distraction, you begin to see what drives you: fear, pride, insecurity. And once you see it, you can control it. That is how clarity becomes dominion. The powerful use solitude the way soldiers use training grounds. A place to sharpen, not to hide. Every hour alone is a weapon forged in silence. Every moment of reflection adds precision to their next move. They know that clarity is strategy, and strategy is power. Psychologically, Isolation breaks dependence on external validation. It rewires the mind to value truth over approval. Once you no longer need to be understood, you become unpredictable, and unpredictability terrifies the herd. You've seen this before. The man who suddenly withdraws from gossip, who stops explaining, who becomes silent, immediately others begin to talk. They project meaning onto his absence. They fear what he's planning. That is the quiet dominance of the sovereign mind. When you stop participating in the noise, you start directing it. You become a mirror others see themselves in. They reveal their intentions, their insecurities, their dependence, while you remain still. Stillness, after all, is not inactivity. It's control. The calmest surface hides the deepest movement. In politics, in business, in psychology, the same rule applies. The clearer mind always commands the clouded one. Because emotion, confusion, and reaction are forms of blindness, and clarity is vision, the only true weapon of mastery. But there is a cost. To see the world clearly, you must first accept it as it is, not as you wish it to be. Most cannot. They cling to comforting illusions, fairness, loyalty, equality of ambition. Yet the sovereign mind sees without sentiment. It studies human nature as a chessboard, not a family. And in doing so, it gains the ability to move pieces without pity. The masses call this coldness, but it is simply realism, the kind that burns illusions until only truth remains. That's the price of clarity, isolation from those who still live in comforting lies. So ask yourself, do you want comfort or command? Because you cannot have both. The mind that seeks comfort must belong to others. The mind that seeks command must belong only to itself. You will be misunderstood, even hated. People will say you've changed. They're right. You've stopped being one of them. You've become sovereign. In time, they will come to you for direction. Because when their noise consumes them, your silence will sound like wisdom, and your clarity, like prophecy. But remember this, sovereignty is not permanent. It must be maintained through constant self-discipline, through ruthless self-awareness. The moment you let others think for you, you fall back into servitude. So guard your solitude as a king guards his fortress. Let no voice enter that doesn't serve your vision. Because clarity once lost is hard to regain. And once your mind bends to the crowd again, it will take years to straighten. Control is never about force. It's about perception. The most powerful manipulation is the one no one ever sees. When you understand people, their fears, desires, insecurities, you no longer need to command them. They move on their own, believing it was their choice. That is the highest form of power, invisible influence. Most chase obedience through words. The wise achieve it through silence. They pull strings with precision, not emotion. They watch as others dance, unaware who holds the rhythm. Ask yourself, are you leading or are you being led? Because the world is divided into two kinds of minds, those who seek approval and those who shape it. If you've seen the truth in these words, don't just listen, use them. Comment your thoughts below. Subscribe for more lessons in psychological warfare and strategic power. And share this video with those who still believe influence requires kindness. They won't see it yet, but you will. Because control begins in silence.